at them. Did everyone, I know there were a lot and required some research, but did anybody actually finish these questions in the time that was given?
Yeah.
One person?
I still have a few left.
I did them, sir.
Okay, let's take a vote on how many people finished them and how many people did not. These are not for submission, but they're good, discussion questions. They're not super hardcore important, but they do add to the. I was working on them right before class began. Did them. Do we need any time to do them now, or should we just move on? Is my question. And try to take a look at them.
Sir, can we just take them up?
Yeah, sure. Okay, well, let's just kind of run over them and see if anyone has anything important to say. Explain why in Hinduism every political decision is also a religious decision. So a lot of these questions, before we begin, you would have studied one aspect or another in some class, history, religion, this and that, in the last 4 years. So these are all, both opinion and factual. So anyway, let's take a look at it. Anyone who want to share what they they want to share? No? Is anybody going to say anything for any question? Did any question pop out to you that you really want to answer? Everyone just turned their videos off. Awesome.
No, that's just because I'm going on to my answers, and then you can still see it, so it's kind of weird.
What?
It doesn't, if you're on your computer, if you're on a different tab, it doesn't shut off the camera. So that'd be way up if it'd be a weird close-up, odd angle.
Oh, okay then.
I just went to get a Gatorade.
A Gatorade. It's really physically demanding being in front of a computer, eh? Got to get those electrolytes back up.
Sir, there's a lot of pressure when you're one of the only 3 people who have their cameras on.
Yeah, I know. Technically, everyone's supposed to have their cameras on, but it is what it is. No sign of Hope Pittman or Dina, eh?
I know. Where's Dina? And Hope.
Dina was in my math class today.
Okay, well, why don't we maybe come back to these? So let's take a look at the rest of that slide, which was...
Hope just joined.
Hope just joined. Welcome, Hope. More issues with your internet? Maybe? Yeah, it's spotty. It is what it is. Which of these 175 postings is this one from? Political culture?
Yeah, it's that one.
All right. Well, let's keep going. We're getting through it, even though I didn't realize it's going to take us. This is the 3rd day. Ideology, a connected set of beliefs about people and society, which generally consists of some of the following. So basically, worldviews, but shared by groups, if you will. Basic assumptions about human nature and society. What could possibly fit under that category of basic assumptions about human society? Do you remember grade 10 civics when we studied Hume and so the social contract? Oh, there's Dina.
Hi, sir. I'm sorry I was late. I had to walk home.
Okay. Where Dina Curry me there. So Hume and Locke. You know what he remembers? Hume and Locke? The state of nature? No? Well,
I kind of remember Locke was the guy who was like, we're like savage, and when we signed the social contract, like we need to be ruled by somebody or whatever, right?
mhm. And Hume?
I have no idea.
Well, the opposite.
Hobbes and Locke?
Well, yes, Hobbes and Locke.
Oh.
Hume.
Uh,
David Hume or Hobbes? Hobbes, not
Hobbes. That's why I was confused. No, so like John Locke believed that we humans were inherently good and that the government should work for society. And then Thomas Hobbes believed that humans were inherently evil and instead society should work on behalf, like for the government. Right?
Well, sort of, yeah. Both need government and both justify the need, not for different reasons, right? So the idea is, basic assumptions. Everybody, societies, groups of people have assumptions of certain, of the nature of humans and society, right? So, it even fits into today's, if you want to use a real world example, with the BLM movement and the proportion of criminals who are arrested or guilty, if you will, or in jail for and being of certain backgrounds versus others, right? And then I'm sure you guys have seen memes where there's two pictures. There's one white person, one black person. One white person did something like crazy, but a white collar crime and got 3 months in jail. And then there's a black person who, one I saw pretended or lied about their home address so their kid could go to a better school, and they were sent to jail for like 15 years. That kind of stuff fits into it. We'll get to it in more detail as we go through, but it's a big part of society and ideology, right? How we assume human nature, or even the people that live in the area we live in or share land with are. An interpretation of the past, very important, especially today as well. Did you hear about the 14-year-old who got arrested for not doing her homework? No, I didn't. Is this a joke?
No, I think it was in America and they protested it.
Well, again, that was fake news. Yeah. Yeah, you have to be careful of what you see and the Breonna Taylor story is all over the news again today, because the police officers involved in that incident, only one of them was charged with some kind of very, very low crime, but none of them were actually charged with, had any charges that were even close to basically murder. And that's what a lot of people were called for. But, one aspect of the story, if I'm going to be as neutral as possible, and that's what I try to be, except for when I tell you I'm glad I live in Canada, not the States, is that, one aspect that you keep hearing is that Breonna Taylor was sleeping and the police in her bed, and the police broke into her home and shot her X amount of times, right? That's the story that people keep circulating. But, another detail to the story was that the police officers claim that they knocked on the door, bang, 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 and they were executing a search warrant. Nobody came to the door, and they broke in. Breonna Taylor's boyfriend claims that he didn't hear any banging and just heard people breaking into his house. So he grabbed his gun and shot one round as a warning. And as soon as the police heard this shot, this gunfire, they opened fire. So that's two totally different stories, right? You hear one story, the first one, and you immediately, your emotions take over and think, wow, you know, these these police are savages. They just broke in and shot this woman who was sleeping. And that's not the whole story, right? So she was on a probationary period because she was stealing, and part of the deal was that she was supposed to do her homework, but she had some sort of special needs and the school wasn't helping her with it, so she wasn't completing her homework. That's why she was arrested. There you go, right? So, you know, arrested for not doing homework, or what Ryan wrote. Both are great examples of how the media will portray a story. Because technically, without going into detail, yes, she sounds like she was arrested for not doing her homework. But where's the rest of the story? Fill in the blanks, right? And this is why, you know, it's so hard to understand news, because often these writers are so good at creating a whole story out of a headline that a lot of people don't even read the story.
Well, I think the problem most people had with it was that the school was supposed to be accommodating her special needs, but because they weren't doing that, she couldn't like keep on track and complete her homework, and that's why she essentially got arrested. So like the school was supposed to be helping her with it.
Yeah, see? But it's, you know, if you want to create an agenda, you hide those details, right? If you're a news article, a news writer, and you want to create a discourse, and just like the Breonna Taylor story, you know, not knowing the facts about the you know, what were presented, police breaking in after knocking, no one at the door, you know, police thinking that they're being fired upon, is a totally different story than a police officers breaking into a home and shooting a person who's sleeping. You see what I mean? And that's where the ideologies come in, where you assume that certain things, and then people get riled up with movements. Again, remember what I told you about getting emotional, and we lose the rational, logical thinking and turn emotional, and then we have, you know, a lot of problems. We have a lot of problems. You know, why do so many peaceful protests turn into violent, violent demonstrations? You can't really answer that question because you don't know the facts. You know, who is are innocent people being pushed to fight back by the establishment, or are the people actually, you know, violent? You can't just make blanket statements. Unfortunately, we as humans have basic assumptions. So, yeah.
But I mean, also, like, when it comes to the Breonna Taylor case, even when looking at, let's say, like, when you're playing devil's advocate to the two different stories, the cop still shot someone who ended up being innocent, and it just doesn't make sense how they didn't get charged, because they still have a, you know, that then becomes just like negligent.
Well, yeah, not necessarily, because if there truly is an investigation, you know, if a police officer is shot at, the police officer, you know, in Canada and the United States, they carry guns for a reason. Mm-hmm. And, you know, regardless of police training or not, they're trained to defend themselves. And these police officers, you know, even the Breonna Taylor's boyfriend admits he shot a gun because he thought they were burglars, and he shot the gun as a warning sign. But the point is, he should not have shot the gun in the first place. Now, that's an assumption already, that statement I just made, because in the United States, if somebody is breaking into your house, the law states you have the right to shoot them. In Canada,
It's
at
not
least
like
in certain states. In Canada, absolutely not. You can't do that.
Also, in
so-
Canada, like police don't have a no-knock warrant. I remember that like you have to commit a crime, and while the police are chasing you, if you happen to go to your home, then they can go, or they have
Didn't
to
they
have a
have-
warrant.
Didn't they?
Wait, what?
No, but
Didn't
these
they-
police officers claim that they did knock and no
But-
one answered the door. And
I
so,
thought
Yeah, because they went in the middle of the
Why
night.
did the cops? Wait,
Well,
why
that's
did
the
the
thing,
cops
right?
shoot?
Because
And-
they thought they got shot at, and so they.
No, I know, but I mean, why didn't they just like shoot the boyfriend? Why did they have to?
well,
Because
this
they just
is
shot
the idea.
random.
Nobody really knows for sure, and everybody has their stories, and it's up to the the prosecutors and the court system to say, okay, well, I believe your story more than your story, and that's they always gather evidence before they charge someone, right?
Sir, did the police get injured?
I'm not sure.
Because
Sir, was
like
there no
if he
body
had the
cams on any of the
sense-
police?
Well,
No, a lot of the U.S. cops don't do body cams.
so
Just
one
like
of the
for a
things
bit.
about body cams is that if you look at all the things that the Black Lives Movement wants, not just the Black Lives Movement, but a lot of people, is body cams are a very, very big thing, because if there's video of an incident, it's much easier to take a look at the video and analyze it than it is to listen to different people's perspectives, right? People always have bias. I could watch an incident from my angle, and you can watch an incident from a totally different angle. We see the same incident, but we see two different things. And neither of us are wrong, right? But if there's a camera, especially on every police officer involved in that, I think it's a really good thing. Now,
Yeah.
Police really don't want that. A lot of police don't want the cameras, and for whatever reason. But anyway, interpretation. Yeah.
Also, like if they looked at the evidence and they saw one of the cops, he was shooting from outside the house behind the window. Like I don't see how, if like his life wasn't really threatened, he just shoot blindly into the house.
Well,
That
it
would-
takes, the whole point is it takes a lot of, these types of incidents create a lot of what if, could have, should have kind of discourse. And one thing I've been seeing circulating on the internet is this meme of, there's a picture of a Swedish police officer and a Finnish police officer and a British police officer and an American police officer, whatever. And then there's information under it, right? So in Finland, police have 3 years of training before they can walk the streets. And then the last, they average one shooting a year or something. And then it goes, through all the different ones. And then it says the United States, American cop has 3 months of basic training and goes right onto the beat. They have the highest amount of police shootings in the whole world. The point of that meme is trying to emphasize that it's about education. It's not about guns. It's simply about education, right? So the whole point is, if anything happens, in terms of social change from any of these unfortunate incidents, ideally, people get training and more education in whatever field they choose to pursue, because if that is true, but it's not as black and white as that. The culture is very different in the United States. The Americans have a very much of a, it's in their constitution to have guns. Most countries in the world are not like that, right? Again, interpretation of the past. The Americans, the reason why in the Constitution they can have a gun, does anybody know why?
Because the U.S. didn't have a military back then, so people had to act as their own militia at times of war and whatnot.
Sure.
People were expected to defend themselves.
Right. So, there was a war of independence between the, whoever chose the Americans side and on
British.
the British. And then after they won the War of Independence, they were like, okay, so we did this because of everyday people who were basically, hunters and things. That's why they had guns. Let's make sure if it ever happens again, then people will have guns. So they wrote it in the Constitution, or at least an amendment. And to this day, historically, people interpret it very differently, right? There was a reason for it at the time. The reason doesn't exist anymore, many argue, but the gun culture has been 250 years in the making. Why do they need guns anymore? Well, that's the point. It's one would argue it's a part of their ideology, right?
Sir, shouldn't they look at the cons and pros? Like, it's pretty obvious there are more cons than pros. Like,
But it's
if
also-
Well,
I'm just
that's up for
thinking-
debate again, right? Because this is like, this is not like what should we have for should we go to see a movie or not during COVID time? What's the pro? What's the con? This is like 250 years and hundreds of millions of people of history and a part of their culture. Like, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's easier said than done.
Yeah.
But I was thinking that, like, if there's stricter gun controls, then the person, then the thieves wouldn't even have guns, and you wouldn't need a gun to protect yourself.
Well, I mean, if there's gun control and you're a thief or a criminal, I'm still gonna assume that they're not gonna register their guns. They're not gonna, be responsible citizens and follow the gun safety laws because they have that gun for malintent.
My idea, it always is, and maybe it's because I'm a teacher, but the way to fix any problem is through education.
Yeah, that's
Because
Mhm.
if you want a gun in Canada, you can have a gun, but how do you get a gun? Well, you need to take a few very serious courses and educate yourself. If you go to the United States of America and you walk in, let's say Florida, and you're 18 years old, you can literally walk in and buy a long gun and walk out.
yeah.
Okay. To get a short gun, I think there's simply like a 2-day waiting period. Right? There's no courses, there's no licensing, there's nothing like that. If you want a gun in Canada, it's very difficult to get a gun. You have to actually take certain courses, you have to be licensed, you have to have background checks, you have to do everything, and that's just for a long gun. You know what I mean by long gun, right? Like a hunting weapon, like a rifle or something. And to get a short gun in Canada, it's like next to impossible. It can still happen, but it's very rare.
But in the United States, you see people with like full-on militia, military grade
Well, they
fire.
have different laws there. You can.
Yeah,
in
no.
these states you can have concealed weapons. Other states you're allowed to carry, visible weapons. In Canada, both are illegal.
There's a girl, I can't even remember her name. I used to see her. Everyone hates her. The one gun girl. What's her name?
Caitlin Bennett. Caitlin Bennett.
Caitlin Bennett.
Yeah,
And
at Penn State.
yeah, oh, the despise. This girl walks around with like a full, like high grade military gun and on like college campuses, and no one really can do anything. She's something else.
I mean, I think she's just like, she doesn't really believe in anything. She just wants to get, make people angry.
Have you ever heard of her, sir?
No, Caitlin Bennett. Is that how you?
Oh, no.
Bennett.
Sir,
Never
don't search
seen
it.
the
You're
girl?
gonna get really.
You're gonna get mad. Like, even if you agree or disagree with her beliefs, she's just infuriating with how she
Yeah.
communicates with other people.
She wore like an Indian costume and said, "Oh, if like you claim you're a woman, then I'm Indian."
Interesting. Yeah, well, she's a an activist. You know, activists are always going to be, public.
No, but she's like just an example of how you can do that kind of stuff. Like if someone walked around with that kind of gun in Canada, people would freak.
Well, you can't. It's illegal.
Exactly.
But she doesn't seem. I'm just reading her wiki there. She's not doing anything illegal,
Yeah.
There's different laws and stuff.
right?
Does she just wear them around her to look intimidating, like scare
Yeah.
off a bully?
She's a activist. So she's obviously, she's a conservative activist.
She's a conservative bigot.
She's a
Yeah.
Trump supporter, obviously.
Trump doesn't even like her.
Bro, concealed carry is whack.
Yeah, but I mean, again, thank your parents for moving to Canada and not the United States.
Okay.
Okay, so let's move on. An explanation of the past. Same thing. Vision of the future, right? These are all things that, excuse me, people and communities and politicians and public, political affiliation groups, parties, if you will, have, right? They look at the past, they look at the present, and they have an idea of the future. Now, the conservative government just recently appointed a new leader, right? So, Peter, what's his name? Peter O'Toole or something? He was immediate in his talk about the future of the Conservative Party and what he hopes Canada will look like, right? So he has he see, the problem with the visual aspect of the Conservative Party in Canada is that they're often compared to the Republicans of the United States, right? And even though the Conservative Party is right-leaning, they're not affiliated with the Republican Party, right? But just because they're both right, they're right. But one thing people always have to remember is that the Democrats are also to the right. But that's a whole other story, right? The Americans really only have two right-leaning choices. One is just slightly more right than the other. Anyway, so O'Toole, one of the first things he did when he hasn't really been too vocal, but when he first got appointed as the leader of the party, he was like, I have a new vision. This is the vision, and it seems, like what was heard is that it sounds a little, progressive, right? And maybe it'll work for them. Who knows? But the point is, there's a vision for the future, and ultimately, a lot of political philosophers have an ultimate goal, right? So Plato, the Republic. How are we going to get? What kind of government can we create so that everybody's working harmoniously, everybody's happy, everybody's good, and we don't really see that type of discourse in everyday politics because we have, when people talk about the future, a lot of times people are like, well, we have enough problems today. Look at the green movement. It's expensive. And people, although aren't going to disagree too much that we need to do something about the environment, or maybe they are, they also say it's expensive and right now we have no money. So, I would love to outfit my house with solar panels and things like that, except for the fact that it costs $200,000. I don't have that money, so I'm going to have to continue relying on the energy, created through nuclear power or gas or what have you, right? And so, hold on. Okay, right? Now, we always have history. In history, we have heroes, people who are, putting up, put up in as a story. And these stories help with the ideologies, right? So, the BLM movement civil rights movement has heroes. Unfortunately, a lot of the heroes on the other side are in the Confederate world, if you will, don't really have much clout as being heroes, even though they do often take, the white supremacists talk about, Lincoln as being a Republican, and he's, look what he did for you guys, but it doesn't work that way, right? And heroes, especially martyrs and people with stories, they create a strong emotional appeal, a connection to the party and the ideology, and it's important to create this story. Remember, I always go back to this idea that everything is just a story, and whether or not you like it or not, it's nothing is it's all fiction. It's all created. Look at all the heroes we know of, and then all of a sudden somebody says, oh, well, their story changed. Look at Jean Vanier. Great example. Hero in the Catholic community, and many, 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 schools named after him. What happened last year? Anyone know?
He was accused of sexual misconduct with children. Something like that.
I don't think it was with children. So basically, he's dead now. And what happened was, his story. Everyone learned about it in grade 10 or 9. He began a whole series of schools around the world that were communities for people with developmental disabilities, etc. After he died, which was not too long ago, a whole bunch of women and nuns, actually, who he worked with, basically came forward and said that, claimed that he sexually assaulted them. And too many people came out that it became the Catholic world kind of changed the story on him, right? So nobody's looking at him as a hero anymore. The school and our boards had to change the name immediately. Interestingly enough, when we talk about racism, there was a call for a lot of street names and cities and schools to change their names. Have you guys heard about the Vaughan Academy? That's the recent one that came into light last week.
What happened?
So Vaughan is a school in Vaughan, high school. You know where Vaughan is, like Canada's Wonderland. And they've changed their name. I think they're just called high school right now. They don't even have a name yet because I can't remember what his first name is, Robert Vaughan or whatever. Historically, I guess through his story, has a lot of ties to slavery. So the funny part of this story is that the government, the ministry, chose to acknowledge that and change the name of Vaughan Public School. But the city is still called Vaughan, and there's no discussion yet about changing the name of Vaughan, the city. Right?
Do you think they will?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, if Dundas gets their name changed,
Are they?
City. Well, people want to change the name Dundas because Dundas was so basically, any loose tie to slavery is now considered 100% tie. And what happened was, in his story, was during the abolitionist movement, Dundas claimed that they should do it slowly. Instead of just abolish slavery, he acknowledged that slavery should be abolished, but he also said it should happen slowly and gradually so as not to, harm the economy. Right? I don't know what Vaughan's story is specifically, but he has a similar connection. Anyway, so why have ideologies? Because it helps us understand society, helps us understand history. It helps the government and the education system explain history to us. And then it sets us up with future goals, right? The problem with ideology, just like any fundamentalism, is that it can be an extremist. It can be taken too far, right? So far left liberalism, far right, Nazism, fascism, communism, liberalism is there twice, totalitarianism on both sides, and the horseshoe, which is the spectrum. And when we go, the key is to find balance, right? Right, Matthew? The key is to find balance, right? Yeah. So here is a, loose depiction of what the Canadian political ideologies spectrum looks like. And you can take a look at that, right? So we no longer have the need for the marijuana party. Marijuana is a racist term. It should be called cannabis.
Why is it? I never knew.
In a nutshell, cannabis. So about 100 years ago, the Americans have always had a problem with illegal aliens, people coming to their country from other countries who want to live in their country, right? This is ongoing. So they claim. And there was an influx of Mexicans about 100 years ago. And the Americans were very much disliked them. And they demonized cannabis and associated cannabis with the Mexicans. And of course, they called it marijuana, in Spanish. And they took a plant that was never demonized it, through propaganda, and then connected it to a whole community of people, which in turn demonized them too. This has had a lasting effect, right? Only recently in history has, that mentality kind of changed, right? But there's still, stereotypes that have been created with, Mexicans and cannabis that are lasting till today, right? Yes, marijuana is a racist word. Use the word cannabis. Even the Canadian government, when legalizing cannabis, they used to call it marijuana. But now on all official documents, it's cannabis everywhere. You won't see official documents with the word marijuana anymore. Fun fact.
So what does marijuana mean in Spanish?
It's the name. It means it's the Spanish word for cannabis.
Okay.
Right? How is it racist? I literally just explained it to you, Miriam. Did you not hear me? Maybe. In a nutshell, I'll try again. The Americans had to were having an influx of Mexicans coming to the United States to live and work. They did not like that, so they wanted to demonize the Mexicans. So they demonized the plant, cannabis, for other reasons, because, and like you asked your question, why would they demonize the plant? Well, because of other industries, etc. But that's a whole other story. So just understand that they demonized it now. Then they associated it with the Mexicans by changing the name to marijuana, which is a Spanish name, connecting it to the Mexicans, and thus demonizing both the plant and the Spanish or the Mexican people at the same time, creating, through propaganda and this and that. It's very easy for a government to change ideologies of the people. We see it happening right now. What year was that, sir? About 100 years ago. You can actually, there's a documentary narrated by Woody Harrelson called Grass, amongst many other, but that one's a very good historical account of cannabis and the history in the North America about it. Very interesting. But the government is very good at creating propaganda. Right now, you guys don't even know it, the mask thing. I don't know if you've seen on Facebook or on Instagram or anything how The government doesn't even need to do anything. It's the people who are shaming each other. I wear my mask so I can protect you, and you should wear your mask too. This is all created by the government as propaganda. You know what I mean? And they've got people to change their belief system and almost shame each other. And this is how it works, right? Are you saying something, Asada? I don't even know. Okay. So all of these have their own very specific political ideologies. The Conservative Party, Reform Party, which doesn't really exist anymore. They were short lived. Bloc Québécois, Liberal Party, NDP, right? So even this guy right here, who is he?
McDonald.
Ronald McDonald, you're right. Wait, no, that's a different McDonald. That was a joke. John A. McDonald, the first Prime Minister of Canada. And somebody or a group of people toppled a statue of him just this past summer. Because he, according to his story, had certain ties to racism as well. Or did he, right? But there's a big movement to erase history. The problem with erasing history is what? It's very easy to understand. Yeah.
When people, I was gonna say that it's kind of like, although it's bad now, it wasn't bad then. So it's kind of like going back into the perspective of
Did you guys in your last history classes, maybe if you had Mr. Revere or me, start off your history course with the big six historical concepts?
I think so.
I was going to do it in this class, but I figured we don't really have that much time. And anyway, so one big aspect is to not, you cannot put your today's viewpoints on historical viewpoints, right? You can't, you have to walk in their shoes. And that's not to say that, if you erase history, you can't really learn from it. But that's not to say you can't judge the negative actions. Obviously, we would always judge what Hitler did as very, very bad. But, to understand the way that he was able to brainwash people, all this stuff. So there's a big movement to erase history right now. Any statue, any street name, any high school that the namesake is attached to racism has to be deleted from history.
Sir.
Yeah.
But Hitler, obviously he was a bad person, but nobody made, I'm saying, toppling statues isn't the same as erasing history. We're still gonna talk about them in history, but they're not gonna be worshipped by
I have to disagree with you.
Hmm?
I think I have to disagree with you because only a small percentage of people actually study history. You guys have it in grade 10. You might take it one more time. Statues, plaques, all these things that are out there, the reason they're there is not only to positively commemorate people. A big reason why statues exist is for history's sake, so that people remember these people. If you delete them, if you delete these statues, you delete this person from most people's understanding. They might never learn about them.
But sir, have you ever seen a statue of a person that wasn't necessarily the people didn't see him as a good person?
But it's also
Have you ever seen a statue of Hitler? No, we always talk about him.
Yes, because that's true. But this is why it's not a black and white issue. It's not, let's leave all the statues up so we can learn about them, versus let's eliminate all the statues and forget about them. It's not one or the other.
Sir, but like you can't say they're erasing history when they never learned the history in the first place. Like there are a lot of things, for example, about native history, black history that people never learn in school.
But even in that, like it's, you know, when you go to downtown, like old Quebec, and you pass a statue, it sparks conversation. And so when you're like a little, but you do, and you like, you'll read the plaque or anything. It's not saying, it's a 50-50. It can
Here's
go
the
both ways.
problem with history. History, once upon a time, was considered one of the most important, classes, disciplines of all academics. And if you look at the historical numbers of how many people would pursue history in university, they used to be, one of the top 5 disciplines. Today, it's one of the considered the least important things. And in university, some departments don't even have a history department anymore, or some universities don't even have a history department anymore. And so there's a big problem with that, because look at the American, what's happening today. Like I mentioned it yesterday, we have these people waving Nazi flags saying, get off my, property, and this is my true heritage and all that. And they have no idea that America's biggest enemy was Hitler and the Nazi Party. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but on that token, David just wrote, isn't it more of an educational problem? Of course it is. You can't fit, grade 10 history. Remember how small that textbook was? You cannot fit everything that happened into a textbook. So, the curriculum developers talk about and develop what they think the most important parts of our history are and try to fit it into a semester, or now a quadmester. Jesus. I don't even know how we're going to get through this course, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? But there's only so much we can do. And history is popular. A lot of movies are based on historical events. But I think the way that society has been going is that it's one of the things that is becoming, lost. And unfortunately, the more people do not learn or forget about history or try to eliminate it, the more we're bound to repeat it.
Also, like when it comes to, like, say Matthew's quote, like that you've never seen a statue of Hitler, but when Hitler did what he did, it was very much wrong in society. Like that's why, America came in, like everyone else in the country, all these other countries came in and aided them. That's why the whole project was under wraps. Maybe in Germany, where people were like brainwashed to believe that this was something that should happen, but everyone else was under the same consensus that it was not okay, especially during World War III.
I mean, it wasn't really like about the Holocaust. Like the Americans were the Holocaust is bad. Like they joined the war really late too. I don't know if this is true, but I was reading that they weren't really allowing, refugees to go into countries.
Yeah, I don't think the Second World War was not about what Hitler was doing to the Jews. It was about what Hitler was doing, geographically.
Yeah,
because he knew it was maybe wrong, but maybe not. But the idea is that was something that came later. But you have to understand something about the history of racism and in Europe. It's not as easy as saying everyone was cool and then they got brainwashed in Germany by Hitler and that's why they did it. All of history of the history of Europe contains some kind of anti-Semitism for hundreds of years before that. It also mixes in with Hitler was able to use ideologies that existed already in everyday life to do what he did. For example, Charles Darwin, who only, happened to exist a handful of decades before Hitler, popularized the survival of the fittest and evolutionary theories. people took that, and there were eugenicists who existed before Hitler came, and added humans to it, right?
Eugenics was actually really popular in the United States before World War II. They like
Yeah.
when they saw Hitler was doing it, they were like, "Oh, I guess we can't be like him." But it was like big in the United States before then.
Well, you can Google Hitler. There was Nazi Party rallies in America up until the Second World War, and even while Hitler was in power. It's not as black and white as a community was brainwashed, right? That mentality is almost part of human nature. The me and mine are better than you and yours. We see it in sports to this day. We see it in schools. We see it in classes. We see it in neighborhoods. And, micro or macro level, it's a big human problem. The us against them mentality or ideologies that are sometimes built into human nature. This is a big problem. So it's not about Hitler and statues and what have you. It's about learning from our mistakes and our almost, it goes back to Hobbes and Locke. Are we really bad and we need to be controlled, or are we good and the government needs to only exist to help us when we need help? Those were the ideas, right? And there's no right or wrong answer, but you need to decide for yourself what you believe. So these are some more, political ideologies. Every single political party in the world has an ideology. The Bloc Québécois, have a much more vocal ideology of separation of Quebec versus the country. In the 90s, there was a big referendum, and the vote was put to all of Canada whether or not Quebec should secede and become its own independent country. It only lost by 0.4%, or 6%, I mean. A lot of people in the far east of Canada really wanted Quebec to separate because then they'd be physically closer to Toronto. That was a joke. Get it? No? But, even today there are separatists. In the history of Quebec, there have been extremist separatists who've turned to violence. And this is the problem about ideologies, is the key is to find balance. And the key is to never get emotional. Right? Anyway, the NDP are very much an ideological party, right? Workers' rights, etc., etc. Now we're not going to do group presentations. You guys did in grade 10 civics. You chose just because if this was a normal semester, I would have had presentations, but we have no time. Even though on paper we have the same amount of time, we definitely don't. Anyway. Yeah. Okay. So let's these are just political ideologies different people have, etc., etc., etc. Socialism. Okay, I guess we can go through these. Oops. So where do all the different left versus right and all the political classifications get their ideologies? Well, of course, history, and publications that have written people, like we talked about, in histories, have started these movements, right? So in terms of classical liberalism, the Industrial Revolution and urbanization really helped the middle class become a thing, right? The rise of the bourgeoisie. And they have money. Because up till the Industrial Revolution and urbanization, nobody had money. You had the ruling elite was made up a very small percentage of the population, and then everyone else was, basically in indentured servitude or, a farmer or slave. Excuse me. And with the rise of the middle class and the rise of education, things changed. So political ideologies were created. The 1789 French Revolution occurred. The fight between authority and the middle class, ongoing to this day. Right? Liberals are against absolutism. Conservatives resist change. When we were talking about the other day, what's the difference between conservative and liberal, progressive versus the opposite, that's a big part of it, right? Of course, we've seen different movements underneath the left and the right, the liberals and the conservatives, because some people want to be a little more left or a little more right. Freedoms of life, people, and then we see the rise of, libertarianism. What's that Caitlin person? She claims to be a libertarian, which has become a big movement in the States as of late. And basically, a libertarian will claim that they are center, but by definition are to the right. That's a whole other thing. We'll get to that later. The working class makes up a huge population and the least amount of rights historically. So political ideologies stem from those things. The conservatives love the past. They're scared or cautious of too much change. Often the religious people are attracted to the conservative types of ideologies versus the left, right? So the religious conservatives would want the Lord's Prayer in school or Sunday shopping to be canceled. In Muslim states, the more conservative ones will want the women to be covered, versus in more liberal Muslim countries, women do not have to be covered. And there's a huge gradient about that too, right? Some countries that are very, very right-wing Muslim, everything of a woman has to be covered, even the eyes. Other Muslim countries, women might just have to wear a slight shawl on their hair. And this all has to do with this, right? These gentlemen, McDonald, Bush, and who's this guy right here? A young picture of him. Stephen Harper. Stephen Lecce, Minister of Education, was his speechwriter. That was his claim to fame when he was much younger. I mean, he's still pretty young, but right. So we talk about like a neoconservative attitude, like neo means new, right? So taking certain ideologies from conservatism and sort of becoming a little bit progressive, if you will. Of course, socialism is a rather new ideology too, especially since the 19th century. Again, response just like the liberal belief system out of the Industrial Revolution, right? People moved and flocked to the cities to get jobs because factories were being built. But as this happened, working conditions, living conditions were all horrible. You think back to classic London 1800s, and everybody's covered in dirt. People living on the streets. And so, one of the biggest things when Marx wrote his manifesto with Engels was like a warning to the upper class saying, if you don't change things right now, the working class are going to rise up because they can't live like this. They work the hardest and they get the least amount of reward. And so where, then they hope for the utopian vision, right? Then people take it to a much more extreme level where they try to create ideal societies, and then we have revolutionaries, right? Who's this guy on the right? Who's this guy? You know who these two people are on the left and the right. Well, this is Karl Marx. This is Lenin. This is, what's his name? He started the NDP movement. And this is Jack Layton, who passed away a few years ago, but was the head of the NDPs. All right. So that's that one. Did we already do this one? No. This is a group activity, which I don't think we're going to be able to get through. No, we can't, unfortunately. All right, let's take a look at symbols. Symbolism is huge when it comes to politics and ideologies. You learned about symbols in religion class, in the world religions. There are many reasons for symbols being very, very important. You don't have to read or be able to read or write to understand symbols. They create a story, an emotional response, especially through history and understanding, et cetera, et cetera. So, they're neither good nor bad, but they are used, and symbolism is used across the world in history and all different cultures, right? So, flags, one of the most visible imagery that we see around the world today. And colors within flags, very important. Many countries have 3 colors as their flags. They're not there randomly. They always mean something, right? We talked about France yesterday, the 3 flag, the blue, the white, and the red meaning something. Equality, fraternity, liberty, and those 3 aspects stem directly to the French Revolution, which occurred directly because of, the rise of the bourgeoisie and the Industrial Revolution, creating a middle class, which was becoming educated and realizing that what's happening is not cool, et cetera, all stem to those 3 colors and symbols, right?
Sir, why do flags in different regions all have like the same colors? Like the flags in Europe, they all have blue, red, and white, and the flags in like Middle East have red, black, and green.
Italy's flag is
They
green.
don't all have blue,
No,
white.
I mean like in general.
They have, because colors are limited, number one, and colors all represent something. So historically, countries choose the colors for their flags, especially after they've gotten rid of monarchies, if you will, and become republics or democracies. Choose certain colors to reflect their struggle or their history that led them to where they are, right? So exactly what I just explained about France. France's flag is now red, white, and blue. It wasn't red, white, and blue before the revolution. The Soviet flag used to be red with a hammer and a sickle. The hammer and the sickle signifies the working class, the people in the fields, the proletariat. The red signifies strength and blood and hardship and all that stuff, right? So color, if you take art, red is hot, blue is cold, but it's so much more than that. There's history to it. It could mean water, etc. So in the Middle East, green, red, black, they all mean something different to different countries, right? Black does not always mean the same thing in every country. Now you notice in Canada, some flags, we still have the crown on many flags. We still have the Union Jack depicted on many flags. the official Canadian flag does not have either. That's the, the front runner. But you go inside Canada, we still have aspects of the French, the fleur-de-lis. We still have aspects of, so does anybody know what this top one is versus this one? This flag and this flag? Yeah. This is England. This is the United Kingdom. Notice how this is in here. But this also, the Union Jack, hence Union, multiple, has the Scottish flag in it as well. So take away the red cross, you're left with the Scottish flag. That's what the Union Jack is. So England does not, this isn't the English flag. This is the English flag. So if you ever see the, the World Cup soccer and it's England, this is the flag that they have on them, right? The French, it's very symbolic. The fleur-de-lis mixed with this. Canada add a maple leaf, add a crown. Hence we get all the Canadian symbols, right? The lion representing the houses of the British monarchy. What's the E stand for? E and the R and the 2. Does anybody know? What do you think it means? Well, let's look at the context. There's a crown. Well, close. Elizabeth Royal II, the current queen of the United Kingdom. So the R is not her last name. Her last name was changed, in history to Windsor. It wasn't Windsor before, and that's what ER2 means. When she dies and the new king is appointed, it will be, if it's Charles, it'll be CR. I don't know how many, but he might change his name, right?
Sir,
Just
why is there still a royal family?
Good question. There are many royal families around the world. Japan, Sweden, Spain, England,
Greece.
Greece. Queen Elizabeth's husband, Philip, is Greek. History. Many royal families were toppled. The French Revolution got rid of the Bourbons, yet the Bourbon line still exists. And there are people who are they don't, other than their history and their family lineage, have no claim to the throne because there is no throne in France. But it still exists because there are many, people who are loyalists to their heritage, their history, and the call to eliminate is not heard or not powerful enough, right? Australia and Canada are very similar countries. We have, similar histories in terms of being a colony. We, our histories were very different on what the colony was used for. Canada got rid of the flag, the Union Jack, in 1960 something. Australia still has a Union Jack on their flag. If you go to Australia, there are many more people who consider themselves British descent than they do in Canada. So there's too many ways to answer that question, why we still have royal families. Maybe one day people will eliminate them. I don't know. Does it affect you at all that your Canadian currency has a queen on it?
I mean, I think it does affect, like the United Kingdom, because at the end, like, where do they get their money? Don't they get it from taxes?
We don't they do not tax us anymore. We do not give.
No, I know, but like the people in the UK.
Oh, where
So
did
like their
royal
general
family make their
income doesn't
money?
come.
Yeah. yeah, I guess the royal family is lives off their people for sure. But there are a lot of royalists who, you know, I mean, one of the biggest things on TV is when a royal gets married.
Is there?
I mean, their like public image is good, so nobody really
Well, I mean, is there any like
has anything against them.
they don't really do
Think
anything?
about it this way: 300 years ago, the French, 250 years ago, the French people, you know, ideologies became so apparent that they did not like the royal family that they basically got rid of them all. Okay, so we'd go back to the last PowerPoint we had about ideologies. In the England, that never happened. It never became a boiling point where enough people did not, you know, want the royal family. Now, the reason is many. There were many reasons. In France, there was a lot of suffering. You know, people were not able to eat. Mismanagement of funds. You know, you can have good kings and bad kings. In England, they have a long history of king after king after queen after king, and many have been negatively portrayed, but many, many, many have been well loved and done very good things for their people. Right? Of course, allowing or the idea that become a constitutional monarchy, so they have now, you know, democratic elections. It's history. It's not a blanket statement on why it still exists or not. You know, we can look at the countries that got rid of them and find out why they got rid of them, but it's hard to tell why certain countries still have them. Right? Look at the flags of the different provinces of Ontario. Quebec does not have any connection to England here, or do they? They do not. But basically, you know, we see the Union Jack, we see crowns, we see lions. It's a part of our history, right? Different coat of arms, all very much influenced by our history of both England and France. Now, of course, as we progress today during the Mass, we opened with a land acknowledgement. You know, I think at least in recent years, especially since Trudeau has been Prime Minister, we've done a much better job at very least acknowledging our pre-Canadian, pre-British and French history in this land. But it's a very sensitive topic. Of course, we all know that, right? It's a very sensitive topic. And, you know, as are the next generation, it's up to you to keep that, you know, acknowledgement at the very least in the history alive, because this is a land that was, you know, some argue taken from a people that's not theirs, right? Now, does anybody know anything about this pattern, these patterns, what they are? What they're called? We call it plaid, but it's not plaid. In Scotland, plaid, or the tartan, is a representation of families and clans. So if you know anybody who's Scottish, ask them what their tartan is, and they'll show you that they have, you know, that this one or this one or this one. Like, you know, MacDonald wears, I think this is MacDonald or this is MacDonald, whatever, right? But it's become sort of fashionable. Anyway, so, you know, in Canada, as our history is based, you know, a big part of it is from the United Kingdom, who created their own tartan, right? So the red is Canadian. So You ever seen a jacket like this? People are, joke that it's the Canadian dinner jacket. No? Yeah. It's not even Friday, ladies and gentlemen, yet. And those of you that haven't chosen. Symbolism, again. Every province has an official tree, a plant, a color, a animal, right? And this is a nice bouquet of all of them in Canada. So, right, what's this? The trillium right here, Ontario. The scepter in Parliament, very important, symbolically. The coat of arms and all its aspects. And it changes over time. Updated, this and that. We have the Order of Canada, which is the highest honor a Canadian citizen can be bestowed upon by the government. Basically, you did something great. It's like the knighting when you become Sir so and so in England, except we don't have a royal family, so we don't follow that. We have our own Order of Canada. Someone asked, is that really what they wear? No, just on ceremony. You guys are very familiar with the 3 men in the bathtub.
Is that what that is?
If you've never seen it before, now you can't unsee it.
Oh, yeah. It reminds me of that meme.
2 men sitting in a hot tub.
3 people sitting in a hot tub. Doesn't even have to be men, just 3 people.
No, that's the meme.
You can't unsee it now.
It's a
In a triangle-shaped hot tub, or like?
Why not? It's funny.
It's a jacuzzi.
Sir. So,
Yeah, a triangle.
Canadian Ontario government loves the trillium as the symbolic. You see it, right? Does anybody not see it?
No, I see it. Now I can't unsee it.
Yeah, you can't unsee it. Yeah.
I just want to know why.
What?
I just want to know why they have the little heads. Like without the little heads, it wouldn't make a flower properly.
I know, eh? If you kind of eliminate the head.
Well, like everything else doesn't have
Well,
a
hold
head.
on. Let's take a look at what the actual flower looks like. Maybe the flower actually has, the little piece in the middle, the little yellow. What's that called? The stamen.
Salmon.
Those of you that are taking biology. All right. And we even have, what's this? That's what type of crystal is this?
Amethyst.
It's an amethyst. Do you know why everywhere you go in Ontario you see amethysts? It's because amethysts are mined in Ontario. There are many different types of crystals in the world, but you seem to see amethysts everywhere here. That's the Eastern White Pine, which is the official Ontario tree. This is, of course, the loon. And then every government has their own symbols too. York Region, Markham, etc. And all the political parties have their symbols too. To me, I don't know about you, but the Green Party, ironically, this symbol always reminds me of a gas station that you see around the world called BP. Has anybody ever traveled to different parts of the world, like an island or something, and you see a gas station that's green? It's BP. It's like, it's almost exactly the same symbol. It's ironic because it's the Green Party. We've changed. We finally have a money with somebody who's not a white male on our money in Canada. But this is, historically either the female queen other than that, just angry-looking white old men. But that's our history, right? But is it? Because there are other people who are part of our country and our history that need to be acknowledged.
Canadian money is so much nicer than American money. Like it's just appealing, like the colors and everything.
You know,
Sir, it's good for like Corona too because you can wash Canadian money.
well, now you can.
Yeah. Like I went to this shop today.
You wash
and they
their
dropped
money.
in
That's interesting.
a bucket of
Never heard of that.
like soap.
You wash your money in soap?
You know,
No, like I went
not wash
shopping.
their money, like wipe it down with Lysol or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. I went shopping and the guy said like just drop your money in this bucket of soap.
Really?
Yeah.
But that's recent. Even when you guys were kids, money was not plastic. Australians, I think, were the first to make plastic money, and then I think the euro. Canada's late to the game when it comes to plastic money. It's good. It lasts longer. It's cheaper because coins last much longer. But do you guys remember this little guy here?
Sir, was that Canadian money? That looked like Monopoly.
No, that's Canadian Tire money, which no longer exists either. I think they're all points now. Yeah, it's a part of our heritage.
I still have way too much of those.
Still, you can still use them, but I don't think you get it anymore. But yeah, we got rid of the penny. Americans still use the penny. Australians got rid of the penny years ago, like 20 years ago. No need for it. It costs like 10 cents to make 1 penny. Now, Canadian
Do you know
song.
if I can? Do you know if I can trade in pennies anywhere?
Oh yeah, if you roll them up, you can bring them to the bank. But there's sorting machines that I think, like at Loblaws and stuff, or Great Canadian Superstore, that still accept them. But the best thing to do is bring it to the bank.
I was hearing a lot of people say like in 25 years the penny is going to have so much value because, or like 50 years it'll be antique. Is that true, or is it just like?
You know what? There's a huge industry that deals with coins of all types, obviously, like going back to Roman coins and further that. But yeah, if you have like a set of very good quality paper money and coins, they are worth a lot, maybe, depending on what they are. But your average penny, I don't know if that's going to be really, you might get 3 cents for it, right? That's still 300% more than it's worth, right?
True.
Now, Canada. When I was a kid, and I'm not really that old, but I'm kind of old, we still heard this song. Have you guys ever heard that song before? God Save the Queen? Not the one, not the band by the Sex Pistols, but the actual song.
Maybe if it was played that I.
Let's see if I can. Oh.
Is anyone there?
Are we supposed to be hearing it?
Oh, you couldn't hear it?
No, you were.
Doesn't matter. I was like, enough of that. It's the national anthem of England. but still played often in Canada, even into the 80s when I was a little boy. Definitely don't hear it much at all anymore. But you know, as you learn in grade 10 history, grade 100 years ago, Canada was like 90% of British heritage. Today, it's not. So even in the 80s, you still had a pretty big percentage, right? Maple Leaf forever. You know, this land is your land. Hockey Night in Canada, that theme, you know, was a big deal until they stopped playing it. You guys might have remembered that. Anyway. Oh, Canada, of course. God Save the Queen. Maple Leaf Forever. These are all the songs. We're not going to sing them. We're not supposed to be singing in COVID schools anymore or speaking moistly. Yeah. All right. So, moving on. These are just key ideas from the notes, as you can see. Right, more key ideas from notes. More key ideas from notes. Here we go. Yeah, we already did this sort of. And you guys read this yesterday, right? Okay. So, why don't we take a quick break, 10 minutes. I will figure out what to assign you for the rest of the class afterwards, and we'll take it from there. So take a 10-minute break. I need to stand up for a second.